If you ever take a good long listen to your heart, you'll probably notice that it makes sounds. And these sounds usually are described as lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. And actually, in order for us to really understand where those sounds are coming from, we have to zoom in and take a look at the valves of the heart. And so on the left here, I have lub dub right here. But real quick, let's label the valves that we have in the heart. So the first one right here is going to be, well, actually, let's just write right, acquaint ourselves with the heart. We got the right atrium here, right ventricle. And the valves that separates those two chambers is going to be your tricuspid valve, or T. I'm just going to write tricuspid over here. And then we have blood that goes from the right atria to the right ventricle to the tricuspid, actually exits the heart through what we're going to call the pulmonary valve, or P, which is right here. And right, this picture is a great image of it, but let's imagine that there's a valve right there. Okay, so this is pulmonary. Tricuspid, T. And so when blood returns to the heart, it returns to the left atrium here. Goes through a valve to the left ventricle. And this valve is the mitral valve, or bicuspid valve. And we'll put a M right there. And that will be mitral valve, M. And then finally, blood's going to leave the heart through another valve, our final valve right here, to the aorta. And that valve is right here. And we're going to call that one the aortic valve. And we'll give it an A. Like that. And so again, what we're looking at is understanding, well, why we hear the sounds that we do of the heart, the lub and the dub. And so real quick, the lub, the first sound that we hear, consider this the first sound that, first heart sound. And we usually call it, and just refer to S1. And in S1, the reason you hear the sounds is the sound of your tricuspid and mitral valve slamming shut. And during that time, it's also important that we note that if the tricuspid and mitral valve are slamming shut, that means that the pulmonary valve and aortic valve have just opened. So at this point in time, the lub is actually when the ventricles are actually pushing blood out of the heart. It's when the ventricles are contracting. And so the dub is then actually just the opposite. The dub is the second heart sound we hear. And we call it S2. And during this time, it's actually the pulmonary and aortic valve slamming shut. And at that time, the tricuspid and mitral valves have just opened. So again, the sounds that we hear, the lub dub, is actually the sound of the valves slamming shut. So the lub is when the ventricles contract and the tricuspid and mitral valves slam shut. And then when the ventricles are relaxed, the tricuspid and mitral valves open, and the pulmonary and aortic valves slam shut. And one last thing that we want to real quickly take a look at is if this is just a timeline of your heartbeat. Okay, and so we've got S1 right here, and then this is S2, sound number 2. And then we have it again, S1 and S2, which would be a 2. And so the reason I'm doing this is because I want us to think about this. In between the two sounds that we hear, this is called systole. And actually, why don't well, this is your systolic pressure. Let me try that again. Make that a little bit. Systole. Okay? And so at this time, we can write, and let me scroll down here. This is the time when ventricles are contracting. And blood is getting pumped out to the body. Okay, and then this time here between the different sounds that we hear, there's this pause, and this is called diastole. Diastole. And this is where the ventricles are actually completely relaxed. And so this is when ventricles are refilling. Okay, so that is a little bit on the sounds of the heart that you hear, the lub and the dub, and then a little bit of an introduction to what systole and diastole means. Again, systole is when ventricles contract. This is if you ever hear about your blood pressure. Your systolic pressure is the top number, the highest amount of pressure that is exerted by your heart. And diastole, when it's refilling, is the low number. So if your blood pressure is 120/80, that top number is your systolic pressure, and diastolic is the bottom number.